This is one of the scariest motorcycle engines ever produced.
Because it came from this motorcycle, the Hayabusa, known as being one of the fastest and scariest production bikes of all time, known for being too fast and indeed too furious. We bought this one for $5,500 and it'll do 200 miles an hour.
Today, we're gonna tear apart this engine and see why this 1.3 liter inline four is so good at making things go fast. Then we're gonna put it back together and see if we can fire it up. But first, let's see if this thing can make some milk. Oh yeah.
Now it's impossible to talk about this bike without talking about the way that it looks. I remember the first time I ever saw one of these, I thought it looked like a big blobby monster and I thought it was ugly. But as I've gotten older, I've come around and I think they look cool now. But I guess it was part of Suzuki's plan to make it look a little grotesque in their own words, just to make it stand out and make it more memorable of a bike. And it is a pretty memorable bike. Everybody knows the Hayabusa, but it's a fast bike and that is not because of how it looks. So we're gonna take the looks off of it, get down to the engine, and talk about why it's so fast.
So in the early 2000s, the motorcycle manufacturers were in an all-out war on who could produce the fastest bike. And at the time, Honda had the Blackbird. So Suzuki was like, hey, we're gonna go after the Blackbird. We're gonna name our bike Hayabusa, which in Japanese means peregrine falcon. Why peregrine falcon? Well, because peregrine falcons eat blackbirds. A lot of symbolism there because this bike did overthrow the Blackbird as the fastest production bike in its time. Now, there was a gentleman's agreement going on at that time, so they limited the speed of this thing to 186 miles an hour. But if you were to take that limiter off, this thing did well over 200 miles an hour.
Another key feature on the design of the Hayabusa, which is pretty common on a lot of motorcycles, is this ram air feature here. This little mesh area, that leads straight into the engine. So as you're flying down the road, air is getting rammed into here, follows down through these plastics and straight into your intake. So the faster you go, the more air you get. Pretty cool.
All right, first fender off. Tank off. Now, one of the things that this bike has is fuel injection system. Up until early 2000s, most bikes ran on carburetors. These are individual throttle bodies, so each cylinder is getting the appropriate air and fuel mixture coming through here. So that allows you to not only make more power, but also have better throttle response. When you get after it on the throttle, you get a nice, crisp, clean response.
Real quick.
So, one more. Pretty cool, unique thing of the time. This is what helped propel this bike to get over 200 miles an hour.
Trick or treat!
Oh, sorry guys, I'm all out of candy. Sorry.
Treat.
Oh, I've got just what you guys are looking for. Valvoline's extended protection line is the ultimate protection to keep your engine running for a scary long time.
Ooh, yummy.
This fall, don't trick your engine with cheap oil. Treat it with Valvoline, the original motor oil. Okay, bye kids! To learn more, click the link below.
So now most of this stuff is off on the top side, so what we can do is just start dropping the engine. We might have a couple things we'll have to take off here hose-wise, but next thing is let's disconnect the headers and then start pulling out the radiator and the oil cooler. Okay, so now we should be able to drop it. I believe we have all of our bolts out.
Pulling down. Whoop. What, I did it fast. Wait, you guys, we don't have extra time to be messing around.
See if you can just lift the rear. Ready?
Yeah.
Nope, nope, nope. Okay, hold on.
This is stuck, but I thought it was disconnected. Whoa.
Oh,
We fell off.
Jimmy, come over here, start fiddling around and see if we're stuck anywhere.
Oh.
What am I on here? Hold on. Ah.
Well, you just got this here.
Okay, let's just disconnect it right here. And that's a way to remove a motorcycle engine. Just madness.
All right, we got the engine out of the bike, and now it's time to take it apart. You know, I'm not a big bike mechanic, but This looks a lot like an engine.
If you've worked on an inline four in a car, you've pretty much worked on an inline four in a motorcycle.
It's just like that, but smaller.
Yep.
With a few different bits. So what's going on here?
You know, you got your head here, you have your center
First block.
your first block, and then you have, you know, your bottom end here.
Uh-huh.
It's like a big puzzle.
So when you take spark plugs out of an engine, you can sort of gain a little bit of information on how the engine's been running. If they're like super black and coated in unburnt fuel, you know that you're probably running a little rich, and inversely, if they're really like light colored and look kind of burnt, then you're probably running lean. And even beyond that, you can confirm that your timing is in the right ballpark with the way that the strap or the ground strap on the spark plug discolors as it gets closer to the body. If you're running too hot, that thing will discolor down into the body, and if you're running too cold, it won't be discolored very much or not far enough, and we should be able to see that on these. And that's a good indicator of where your ignition timing's at, which is a big factor on how hot your cylinder's running.
And these look pretty good. If anything, it's more lean than rich, but to be honest, that color's pretty good.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. No real build up on them or anything. It looks like timing's in the right ballpark.
Yeah, looks good. Now it has this little plate right here that prevents the oil from sloshing up in the head. It's also fed, oil pressure comes through here and it squirts down on top of your camshaft.
This is a camshaft. This is responsible for opening and closing the valves on the intake side. So we'll have to make sure we put that back in on the intake side. Hey man! Ah! No! No!
There we go.
What's all that salt on there?
We got a little carbon buildup. Cylinder looks pretty good. Let's see if I can remember what Joby did yesterday and put this thing back together. Now, the first thing we're gonna put back in our block is our crank. I have here the crank from WRX, the engine that blew up on us for some reason. Now, it's very similar in a sense is that it has the crank journals here that your connecting rods connect to. You have one side that has your flywheel, one side that does your timing. Now, with a motorcycle engine, it's similar in principle, but it does have a couple of differences. Now, on one side, this is your flywheel. This is also connected to your water pump and which connects to the transmission, the clutch pack of the transmission side. And on this side, you have the magneto. Now this is a magnet that has a coil pack inside it, and when you take a magnet and you rotate it around a wired coil, it creates current. That current goes to a voltage regulator, which then gets distributed to your electrical components of the bike, also creates your spark. So all of that is on one assembly. You also have this gear right here that interacts with the transmission. So no gearing here on this, gearing on a bunch of different places, and that's because the transmission is literally butted up right against the crank. So we're gonna slap this thing back in. Rods up, yeah.
Rods up.
Rods up. And slap, lift yours up a little bit. Set it down square. All right, see how that rotates around. Nice, nice and smooth. This is gonna be tough, Jimmy, because we didn't take the connecting rods off because we were just like, we just take the pistons off. So you gotta hold them like that while I take this whole hunk of junk and see if I can slam it on top. While also
Not getting my arms caught in there.
just do it one at a time.
All right, let's do this guy.
Okay, that's good. That's
Hold on, you gotta
good.
lift it up. My arm's getting caught.
My arm's getting caught. Oh, my poor arm. Okay, great. Oh,
She slipped out.
she slipped out. There we go. All right. Oh, that gear fell off.
I don't know about this, Jerry.
There you go. It just slipped off. We're good now. See how-
Anything that just slips off is not supposed to just slip off.
And watch out. Don't hit your hands on those thrust bearings. There you go. Good stuff. Have it fall towards the front. Okay. Give it a spin, Jimmy. Nice. Okay, we're good. Okay, so we have our clutch assembly installed in the bike, and it works very similar to how a car clutch works. You have a clutch pad that forces up against the flywheel and engages the engine with the transmission. Now with a motorcycle, there's just a couple more components that make it a little bit more tricky to understand, but it does the same principle. So unlike a car where you have a single friction disc, this you have multiple discs. You have what's called friction pads, and then you have metal pads that engage with those friction pads, and those go in between your outer hub and your inner hub. So this will freely spin with your transmission. This is directly connected to your crankshaft. And so when you want those two to mate together, you use these. You can see that only the metal discs are moving in here.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now what connects all these two is this guy right here. This is the pressure plate. So this sits on here and it clamps. All the clamping force is between 2, 4, 6 springs. That pushes this whole thing together. And when you want to disengage it, a rod from the other side pushes a hydraulic ram that pushes on this lever, which pushes on this hub, separates the whole thing. This allows it to turn independently of that. You switch gears, you let off the clutch, boom, it engages, and now you're speeding down the road. Now, one of the things we talked about before is the reason this engine can make so much power is because of the size of it in motorcycle comparison. One of those things is these pistons right here. These are 80 millimeters in diameter. To put that in perspective, the Civic has 85 millimeter pistons. Also an inline 4, this is an inline 4. That car weighs a couple thousand pounds. This thing weighs a couple hundred. That's why this thing can go 200 miles an hour and the Civic can't. Okay, here's our cylinders. This is kind of like a multi-piece step here. This is the middle portion of our assembly, and we probably did this in the wrong order. Probably should have put the pistons in here, then connected our connecting rods to the crankshaft with the bottom end undone. But you know what? We like to make things interesting. So we're gonna get this cylinder on, then get the head on, and hopefully fire this thing up.
Jerry, there's still a lot of stuff on the table.
Yeah, but not really.
This is a lot of stuff.
Now, this is where it's gonna get a little complicated. I think what we're gonna do, center pistons first. Bring her down, Jimbo.
All right, bring her down.
Okay, hold on. Okay, bring her down. Okay, great. How's that feel?
Not right.
I'm starting to think we didn't put this together properly.
We did. All right, we got some new ARP head studs. This is gonna be our link to the cylinders to our head. So we're gonna make sure those are nice and new so that when this thing sets off for the first time after we rebuild it, the head doesn't fly off. Okay, so our timing chain won't fall to the bottom and we have to put the head back on. Do a little wire right here around this, then we'll feed it up. And we'll just keep it up here. Cylinder on. Now let's get the head on there. All right, we got the head of our Hayabusa engine. This is a dual overhead valve setup with 4 valves per cylinder, 2 intake, 2 exhaust, big chunky intake valves. Look at those things, sucking in the maximum amount of air possible. We're gonna slap this thing on here.
Stop, you're making fun of me. Stop it.
You couldn't do it a worse way. You have the longest wire on the planet.
Okay, I got it. It still worked.
Head on. Good job, Jimmy.
All right, I'm back, and it's time to finish up this Hayabusa engine. You guys got a lot done, but now it's time for a pretty critical part of putting any engine together, which is timing.
We got the timing marks aligned here down at the crank, but we have our 2 cams up here at top. They have some markings on them, which we're checking right here. We get that wrong, and this thing won't run, and if it does run...
I believe it's an interference engine.
Oh, okay, so then...
So we gotta get it right.
Yeah, because if we don't, you get what we call slappy valve, and that's where the valve slaps into the piston, and they become real best friends.
They actually fight. The piston always wins.
So we got to make sure that this is right. Then once we get these cams in, we're kind of like on the home stretch.
So we are on intake side, we should have the number 2 level with this, and on the exhaust, we should have number 3 level with this, pointing at each other.
When we put tension on it, no, we're still 1 tooth off, right?
Yeah, so it's like that needs to rotate 1 click.
Okay, good. What?
Well, skip it back, huh?
I don't exactly know how you tension that in terms of like.
Okay, no, when enough is enough.
Yeah. Okay, tell me when I come back around. I think I'm closer.
And keep going, and stop right there. So these are lined up with the chain marks, but the crank is 180 out, I think. And, oh, there it is.
That's good. Right?
Probably. Hey, what the hell is that?
I don't remember. I'm trying to think of where I pulled this thing off. Woo!
Okay, we're fine.
We're fine. So this is the gear that the starter engages in with the clutch. It would help if we had a manual. You know, you're not supposed to remember this stuff. We'll just do D&T.
I mean, it definitely matters less on an engine that spins faster, right?
Yeah, you just don't want it coming off, and it won't.
This looks gapped up, huh? Missing some hardware, huh?
Yes.
And I noticed these hardwares are missing too. We'll probably want to put those back on.
Yeah, you want to find them?
It feels, Jerry,
What?
we got a crack, man.
Where?
In the case. Like, right there.
Oh, brother. Okay, well, that's not good because you can, I don't know if oil can come out of there.
Yeah, but even if it can't, what it definitely means is that something inside of here is in a
bound
position that it shouldn't be, because when we tried to torque down these bolts, it pushed through the case rather than just coming together like it should. So this has to come back apart at least.
You know what I'm thinking though?
What?
I'm thinking this gives us a great opportunity to do something special.
What?
We were just gonna put this thing back together stock.
Yeah.
How about we pull it all back together again and we go balls to the wall, okay? I'm talking forged internals. I'm talking cryo-treated transmission gear sets.
What?
Okay, I'm talking port and polish on the head.
I mean, you don't say
valve
no
springs,
more, dude.
pistons,
I'm in.
connecting rods, crank. Let's do it up. Let's make this thing freaking powerful.
All right, well, let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what we want to put it in.
Yeah.
And then we'll fix this.
Yep.
And then we'll put it in something cool.
Sounds good.